Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So, I've had a business coach now for the last several years, and it's actually been the most ROI positive thing I've ever done in my business or in my life. And so in this video, I want to talk through some of the lessons that I've learned from my latest CEO coach. His name is Eric, and he's very, very expensive. But I think the cool thing about this stuff is that when it comes to business coaching and CEO coaching, a lot of the stuff that a CEO coach teaches can also be applied to life. So whether or not you have a business right now, I'm hoping you can get something of value from this video. Now, a bit of backstory on Eric. Eric was at the early team at Skype before their sort of $1 billion sale to eBay. Then he was the CEO of a restaurant chain here in the UK, which he grew over like a 12-year period. And then he retired, and now he lives in Portugal and does CEO coaching on the side because he doesn't need to make money anymore. And so he's all happy days. And Eric was actually a former student of my part-time YouTuber academy, and he interviewed me on his podcast, and we were talking about content creation and stuff. But then while I was being interviewed on his podcast, I realized, wow, this guy knows a lot about business. This guy's just like has frameworks for everything, and he's just got a really gentle demeanor and a good way of thinking about things. So I asked him after the podcast recording, hey, you know the CEO coaching that you do you think you could work with me? Could I become a client of yours so that you coach me to level up in business and in life? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so since then, we've spent dozens and dozens of hours together. We've been doing weekly sessions for an hour ever since like October 2022. So it's been about 7 or 8 months now. Now, the story here is that when I first started working with Eric, he gave me this questionnaire, which was a sort of kind of assessing where I felt with business and with life. And I've got the results of this questionnaire up. So it's in company and leadership and self. And actually, if you're interested in taking this questionnaire for yourself, I'll put a link down below. It's a completely free business coaching bundle that has all these templates and all of the things just in a little package that you can download completely for free if you like. But essentially, for all of these, I guess 27 different questions, I answered a scale of 1 to 5, and I got this sort of score at the end of it. Now, I want to share some of the self ones because again, I think these are the ones that are most applicable to life. I'm consistently productive, minimizing distractions and firefighting so I can focus on what matters most. I was a disagree on that one. I did feel like I had work-life balance. I was a maybe on having the courage to step into difficult conversations. I was middling for taking consistent and deliberate action day after day, and this action generates the results I'm seeking. And I was a strongly disagree for I schedule time for continuous learning in my calendar. I'm clear about where I'm headed in business and life and how to get there, and also regularly seeking feedback. I do believe that my company makes a meaningful and positive impact in the world, and I was a sort of middle for I believe I'm operating at my full potential. And this one, number 6, I am clear about where I'm headed in business and life and how to get there. Oh, that was the tricky one, because I realized that I have never really been clear about where I'm headed in business and in life, or in work and in life, back when I had a real job. And to an extent, this is understandable, right? Because to an extent, no one can predict the future, and it's okay not to have a plan and all that kind of stuff. But it still feels quite stressful when you feel like you don't really have a direction, you don't really know where you're going with things. And so Eric and I spent a lot of time talking about this, and really the answer to this, and all of the psychology research says this as well, is just goal setting. Just setting a few goals and then actually building systems to actually hit those goals. Now, one of the things about all this CEO coaching is that often there's a joke amongst entrepreneurs that your CEO coach is just kind of like your therapist, just a lot more expensive. And that segues nicely into the sponsor of this video, which is BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it is 100% online. And with BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed therapists and professionals who can help you out with a wide range of issues. And actually, BetterHelp is way cheaper than hiring your own CEO coach. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences, and that way BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. You can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's text or video or phone call, and you can message them anytime and schedule sessions whenever it's convenient for you. And the best part is, if your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch to a different therapist completely free of charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and level of quality that you'd expect from an in-person therapist, except it's entirely online, and so it's low friction and you can do it on your own terms. And actually, a few months ago, I had my first therapy session with a BetterHelp therapist, and we talked about a few things like my fundamental need to be liked, and like how I struggle to sort of give constructive feedback to team members and to say what I really feel in relationships. And it was a really interesting conversation that actually made me think about a lot of things. Anyway, if you're interested in potentially trying out a therapist through BetterHelp, then head over to betterhelp.com/AliAbdaal, and that link will give you 10% off your first month of therapy. So thank you so much, BetterHelp, for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into it. Now, goal setting is an interesting thing, right? Because it sounds super simple on the surface, but I've always had a bit of a weird relationship with goals, where I was always like focusing on inputs rather than outputs. Like, oh, my goal is to make 2 videos a week rather than to hit a certain subscriber count, because I want to focus on things that are within my control. But the way Eric kind of explained it to me, and this is just has been implanted into my brain as a firmware update now, is that imagine you're trying to throw darts, right? You're just throwing darts and you're trying to hit a dartboard. But now imagine you're completely blindfolded. So it's probably going to be kind of annoying and kind of stressful because you're blindfolded and trying to throw darts. And Eric's point was that setting goals is just about taking off the blindfold so you can see where the target is. Now, even if you do nothing else, if all you can do is see where the target is, you'll at least get a little bit closer to it. You could be the worst darts player in the entire world, but if you can see where the target is, you'll at least start taking steps in that rough direction. It's not a destination that like, oh my God, I have to get to this destination, but at least it tells me I'm going there rather than there. So practically speaking, what does this look like? Well, basically it's a Google Doc, and this is how Eric and I set goals and that we've been doing for the last like 8 months or so. Essentially, the idea is that we're splitting up life into 3 broad domains: health and wealth and relationships. Those are, there's other categories in life, but broadly, health, wealth, relationships, or health, work, and relationships. And the basic idea of this whole goal setting thing is that if you're new to goal setting, the objective is for each of these 3 categories, just set somewhere between 1 and 3 goals for the quarter. And so, for example, in health, I had these 3 goals: cooking adventurer, acro yoga, and athletic muscular body. Again, the titles of these don't really matter, but 2023 goal: to get better at cooking, to have fun with it, to treat it like an adventure, and to be able to cook healthy, tasty meals for myself and for my friends, almost like leveling up the cooking trade skill in World of Warcraft. Now, this is not a smart goal, and it's also not particularly challenging. It's not like I'm trying to enter a cooking competition or win a Michelin star. I'm literally just roughly sketching that when it comes to my health, I would like to do these sorts of things just to get a little bit better at cooking. And then underneath the goal, which I'd set for homework, we discussed just basically like, okay, what are the actions that I'm taking? And that was all there is to it. But then at the end of the quarter, skipping ahead a little bit, I did a Q1 review, where it's like, how is this particular goal going? These were just some very vague thoughts 3 months later when I actually reviewed these goals. Similarly, acro yoga, flexibility and mobility, and then athletic muscular body. This one was a bit more smart because I knew I wanted to train 3 times a week. I knew I had a DEXA scan, and so that gave me some numbers. And so, the idea is that every day I do something at least. And so the action point from that was, hey, why don't I just get a health coach? And so now I have Dan Go. You might have seen him on Twitter and LinkedIn. He's my health coach now. So he and I have calls every couple of weeks and he programs my workouts. And it's just been unreasonably effective to just at the start of the year or at the start of the quarter or really at any time in the year, just set some goals. And I like limiting it to 3. And I like splitting it up into health and work and relationships. When it came to work, it's like basically trying to finish my book, trying to film some YouTube videos, and launching our final cohort of the Part-Time YouTuber Academy. And then there were a few kind of books that Eric wanted me to read, a few books that I've read. And then the annual goals when it came to relationships was to be a great boyfriend, to be a group adventure leader and organize like adventures for friends, and to be a dinner party chef, which relates to point number 1. This was a case of taking the blindfold off and just seeing the target. And the fact that I've seen the target now means that I've actually done way more stuff towards all of these than I have ever in my life ever done when it comes to goal setting. I've always done the whole like New Year's resolution, and I've had like a Notion page of like, oh, these are my goals for the year. But then I would never look at them, and I never had any sort of accountability system to look at them. But then every couple of weeks when Eric and I hop on a call, he's like, how's progress in your goals? And I'm like, that's a good point. How is progress in my goals? We open up this Google Doc, and just the fact that I look at this at least once a month means that at the very least, I'm taking steps towards moving in the direction of some of these goals. And then there were a couple that were scrapped along the way. Like, at one point I was thinking, do I want to hire a ghostwriter? Because I have all this stuff in my head and I just wanted to get it out. And I was like, you know what? Forget about it for now. I enjoy writing. I enjoy doing stuff myself. So that kind of got scrapped. Q1 review, scrapped because not a priority right now. And there's enormous relief in just being able to say, you know what? This goal is no longer a priority. Therefore, it's not going to happen. And just trying to keep it to just 3 goals in these 3 different categories. Now, the other thing to mention here is that when we want to achieve some kind of goal or move towards some kind of goal, usually goals are a combination of habits and tasks. So a habit is something that happens regularly and a task is a one-off thing. So for example, for my athletic muscular body goal, the habit is gym blocks 3 times a week preordained, i.e. I go to the gym 3 times a week and it's in the calendar. Similarly, 10,000 steps a day is a standard that I want to maintain every week. But buy a walking desk treadmill thing is a task because it is a task that helps me fulfill the habit. So when we think of goals and simplify them to habits and tasks, again, this is the sort of thing that makes doing this stuff a lot easier. Like if I want to finish my book by the end of May 2023, then the habit is I want to write for 4 hours every day, and I managed to write-ish for 4 hours every day. I didn't hit that target a lot of the time, but just the fact it was there, the fact it was in the calendar, meant I moved way closer towards it because the target was visible and I'd taken off the blindfold. Okay, key point number 2 is another thing that came out of that initial onboarding assessment-y type thing. And we were essentially looking at what are the categories where I've got a 1 out of 5, where I strongly disagree with that particular thing. And one of the things was I have protected time in my calendar every week that allows me to think about strategy and industry trends, as well as review company and team performance. There was also 1 out of 5 for I schedule time for continuous learning in my calendar. And then there were a few other points in the sort of 4-hour onboarding call that Eric and I had where he used the phrase of ideal week. Now, I've already talked about the ideal week in my Trident calendar method, so if you've seen that video and you've applied it, then feel free to skip to the next timestamp. But this has been one of the most game-changing time management and organization and productivity techniques that I've started applying over the last 9 months. And the idea is that essentially you block out what would your ideal week look like. And this connects really nicely to the goals thing, because if you've set goals that require certain habits and you want to maintain the standard of those habits every single week, then you've got to make time for those in the calendar. And we all only have 168 hours in the week to play with. Assuming we sleep for 8 hours a day, I think that's 112 hours that are left. And so we've got to figure out what we want to do with these 112 hours of time. So what I've done here is I've created a blank Google Calendar, and I've called it Ali's Ideal Week Calendar. And I've decided that every morning I want to wake up at 7 o'clock. And so 7 to 8 is my morning routine. I've decided I want to go to bed somewhere between 10 and 11. And so 10 to 11 p.m. is my night routine. Get into bed and read. I've decided that every morning, 8 till 9, even on weekends, I want to do breakfast, journaling, and a morning walk potentially. And I've decided that every weekday at least, I want to do lunch between 1 and 2 p.m.-ish, except on Wednesdays where we have a team lunch because most of the team are around on Wednesdays. I've decided I want to go gym 3 times a week, and I'm an entrepreneur, so I can do whatever I want in terms of my schedule. And so Tuesday afternoons, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday mornings by default will be the gym sessions. And then I've put in a couple of meetings that I've got in the calendar. So our team meeting on Wednesdays, our content squad meeting, and then a couple of one-on-ones with Angus that I have on Tuesday and Friday. I've said that Wednesdays after the team lunch, we're going to do team hangouts and leveling up time, which is that dedicated time for learning and improving skills that's in the calendar. And I've decided that on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, I want to have time to write. Uninterrupted deep work writing blocks. And then finally, Thursday afternoons after the gym is when I can take various calls. So this is all the work stuff that's taken care of. But, as I've learned from Eric, part of CEO coaching and business coaching is not just about thinking of work, but about thinking about the self and leadership and health and relationships and stuff as well. And so for me, Mondays and Thursdays are date nights. And then I've defined that every Tuesday evening is the time for the social dinners, which ties in with my goal of being a cooking adventurer. And then I've also added a block in for Sunday mornings. And actually, we've been doing this for the last year or so, having brunch with my brother and with my sister-in-law on Sunday morning, and then if other friends are around, we invite them over for brunch as well. Now, this whole ideal week calendar thing has been absolutely game-changing because it just shows me where are the blocks of time in my calendar where I actually can make progress towards the goals that I said I actually wanted to achieve. And this has given me an enormous amount of clarity, because back in the day when I used to set goals, I didn't used to make time for those goals in my calendar, and I'd do it for like a week or two, and then I would completely forget. But setting an ideal calendar that's a recurring thing, I don't look at the ideal calendar all the time, but when I'm planning my actual calendar for the week, I will look at the ideal calendar and I'll think, what is the difference between how I would ideally like to spend my time and how I'm actually spending my time? And then just trying to understand what are the reasons for that difference. And so in those first few sessions with Eric, where we set ideal week as like a homework thing, anytime we would come up with a task or something that I wanted to do regularly, he would say, have you added it to your ideal week? Or let's add it to your ideal week. And I'd be like, all right then. I'd open up the Google Calendar and I would literally add it into the ideal week. So when he said, we need time in your calendar for continuous learning and improvement, I was like, all right, cool. And we put it in and we realized there wasn't any time in the calendar, so we juggled things around, and now there is time in the calendar for continuous learning and improving. Now, the other thing that came up in this process is that when it comes to setting goals, we want to limit it to just a small, manageable number of goals. I think 3 is the absolute maximum in most of these categories. Maybe not in work, because most people have more work goals because of all the different things that we do. But a very easy way to not forget about potential goals is to put them into a parking lot or a bucket list. And so with work, for example, we literally have a Notion page called the bucket list that's categorized by company, book, customer success, marketing, second channel product, deep dive email. And anytime me or anyone else has an idea for something that is not one of the 3 goals that an individual team member is working towards for a 6-week cycle, because we work in 6-week cycles, it just goes straight into the bucket list. And then every 6 weeks, we look at the bucket list and we decide, okay, based on what's in the bucket list and based on our actual goals, what are the little projects that we actually want to take on? Similarly, for my personal life, I use the app Things for my to-do list, and so I have a bucket list of songwriting, building a YouTube channel, and learning music production, and busking on the London Underground and taking singing lessons. These are things that I want to do, but they're not a priority right now, and therefore they're tagged as someday in Things. This is basically like having a little bucket list. But the easy way to do this, and what Eric initially suggested, is that underneath the kind of goal setting document, you create a parking lot section. And the parking lot is where you park ideas until you're ready to make them actual active goals. And then for my personal life, essentially what I have on my bucket list is this energy investment portfolio. I made a video about this like last year, but essentially all of the items in my bucket list, and then habits, projects, and tasks, and essentially trying to keep the list as minimal as possible, because if I take on too many goals, I'm not gonna have time to actually do any of them. The way Eric recommends doing this, again, I'm just giving you a bunch of different methods so you can decide what works for you. A really easy way of doing this is not using any fancy apps, and just at the bottom of your whatever document you're using to track your goals, you just have a parking lot section. And so for example, knowledge management system for content, I'm just gonna cut that and just shove it into the parking lot because it's not a priority. And if I wanted to within the parking lot, I could just like have it as a storing ground, a parking lot as it were, for the goals in work, health, relationship, hobbies, however you want to define it. But just having them in an easy to access Google Doc or Notion page or whatever system you want to use, and a place where you actually look. Again, it's about taking off the blindfold and actually looking at the target so that you're more likely to move towards the target. Now, when it comes to this ideal week stuff, I've introduced so many people to this method, like basically everyone in our team now uses it. But when we started introducing this, initially there was a little bit of pushback, like, oh, but like, you know, when life is so scheduled, where's the spontaneity and stuff? And I actually think that the ideal week, having a calendar like this, that where I know this is how I would love to be spending my time, it creates more freedom and spontaneity in my life rather than limiting it. Fundamentally, I can always choose to deviate from the ideal week, but when I know what I want to be doing in a given time slot, like right now it's a Monday morning, I know that I want to be filming. If I didn't have that in my time slot, I might have just watched Diablo 4 videos for like a very long time. And this really shows me where are the blocks of time where I'm doing the things that I intend to be doing, and where are the free blocks of time. Like Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday evenings, Friday evenings, these are broadly free blocks of time that I can use to explore whatever I want. And so I have this good balance of exploration of new things and spontaneous things, but also making sure that like work, health, relationships, I'm actually giving time to the most important things in my life. Okay, final thing we're gonna talk about in this video, because this has probably been quite long, but hopefully it's helpful so far. If it is, I'd love it if you can drop a cheeky like down below. It really helps us out. But final thing I want to talk about comes from Eric's book, The 3 Alarms. This is a really cool method of identity-based goal setting. And this is something that we worked together with Eric when we were in Portugal a few months ago. It was me and the whole team, and he came over in person because he lives in Lisbon, and he taught us this method for tapping into our dream identities. And we were all like, whoa, this is really good. Basically, the idea is, again, we are splitting life into 3 components: health and work and relationships. I hope you can see some kind of theme here. And for each of these, we want to define an identity, values, and daily quests. Basically, the idea here is that if you can tap into an identity, it's way easier to make a habit a thing. I am a YouTuber and a writer, therefore I make YouTube videos and I write. I don't have to like, I mean, I sometimes kind of do, but I don't have to often tell myself like, or really like, oh, I must write for 4 hours a day, I must do this, I must do these YouTube videos, because it's a fundamental part of my identity. It's just what I do. I still need to motivate and discipline and willpower myself into doing it some of the time, but the identity carries me most of the time. So these are Eric's identities. At 6:30, he becomes his world fitness champion. At 9 a.m., he's the world's best coach. And at 6:30 p.m., he's the world's best husband and father. That is one way of doing these particular identities. I prefer a more fun way of doing these identities, which involves superheroes, basically, or some kind of fictional or real life character that has the identity that you want to embody in each specific area. So for example, for me, for health, my identity is Hawkeye, you know, the Avengers superhero, because I think he's cool. For work, my identity is young Charles Xavier, because he's good looking and has a great accent and teaches stuff, and I would like to embody that energy of like motivational and inspirational and teaching stuff. And for relationships, I would like to embody the identity of someone like Chuck when it comes to the personal relationships in my life, like with my girlfriend or with my friends and family, you know, that kind of thing. Now in the values column, you want to figure out for each of these identities, what is it about, like, what are the values that this identity has that you would like to embody in your own life? So for me, why do I want Hawkeye to be my thing? Well, because he's hench. Super flexible and mobile, which is exactly how I want to be. I really like bows and arrows. I think it's a cool thing. I'd like to learn how to use a bow and arrow at some point. It's probably quite disciplined. He probably doesn't skip workout days and like really goes the extra mile. And so when it gets to the hard bit of a workout where I'm like, oh, I've got one more set. Oh, I don't want to do it. I could just leave. I could just get out of the gym right now. I've already done my work, and all of that bullshit starts to happen in my mind. I try and remind myself, what would Hawkeye do? What would Hawkeye do in this context? And usually, most of the time, that results in me thinking, you know what? I'm gonna go the extra mile. I'm gonna finish that set. I'm gonna go for the personal record, or whatever that thing might be. When it comes to young Charles Xavier, i.e. in the X-Men First Class series of movies, because I haven't read the comic books, maybe I should. What does he do? Well, he shares stuff without fear. He's like a teacher, fundamentally. He's quite motivational and inspiring. Like, he just sort of brings great vibes and energy to the people around him. He literally brings people together. Like, he invented a school, built a school for gifted and talented people. And bring them together, and he sees the value in everyone. That's really nice. That's a sort of identity I'd like to embody when it comes to filming videos or hanging out with my team or like doing work-related stuff. And then with Chuck on the relationships front, what are the values that this person embodies? Well, he's sincere, he's enthusiastic, he brings people together, he doesn't take himself too seriously. These are all the different things that I would like to bring to my own personal interactions in relationships. Now, when we ran this session with Eric in Portugal, he got us, all 12 of our team members, 12, 13, however many there were there, to just write this down on a single A4 piece of paper, and we just had a few different columns. And this was just actually really helpful, like just spending a few minutes in silence, all of us just sitting there thinking, what is the identity I want to embody? For one of our team members, the relationships identity was Jesus, which is fair enough because of the way that Jesus approached relationships. For one of our team members, the health identity was playful David Goggins. You know, because David Goggins has all the whole like,
it never gets any easier. You gotta get harder.
But like playful David Goggins is a David Goggins that doesn't take himself too seriously, that's a bit more chill, a bit more fun. But this is actually really helpful. This is really helpful for tapping into the sort of values that you want to embody when it comes to the sort of person you want to be in these specific domains of life. And then the final thing here, and this is something that we have continued doing, is basically the idea is that every single morning within each of these domains, health, work, and relationships, you define one daily quest. And this is really fun because within our team, we have a Slack channel for these daily quests. And so the idea is that, you know, when we remember every day, we write and we share our health, work, and relationship daily quests with the rest of the team. So for last week, for example, Gareth his health was run, his work was newsletter competitor analysis, and relationship was to find present for a friend. Mine was gym, diagrams for a book called Grandma. Becky's was arms and back day at the gym with a crying emoji, write 3 new shorts, and gym with a friend. So it's just things like that. There's these little things. And what we've found is that by sharing them with each other on the Slack channel, it's good for keeping the team connected, but it's also nice to get a bit of accountability and a bit of community vibes around this idea of daily quests. Now again, if you want to get all of these templates, all of these resources, they're completely free in our business coaching bundle down below. And if you like this video and you're interested in potentially starting your own business, then you're going to love this video over here, which is all about the castle method for starting a business. And that's the method that I would follow if I was starting a business completely from scratch today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Bye-bye.